Hello my beautiful friends and welcome back. So I asked you guys over on Instagram for some relationship, intimacy and sex questions, so we're going to be having a little intimacy chat today and I'm very excited. So let's just dive right on in because what are we waiting for? So our first question is how to become more confident / open up in the bedroom, and another one of you guys asked, girl, I can never get out of my head from worrying during sex. Totally ruins the mood. So these two questions tie into confidence, and this is where I would like to thank Beducated for sponsoring today's video. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with them as I have worked with them quite a bit in the past, but I absolutely adore Beducated. So Beducated is an online course platform. It is basically the Netflix of sexual wellness. Think of it as a YouTube with all of the sex information you wanted but you never got. They have an expert backed library of courses and their library is constantly growing. One of the new courses that Beducated have is their sexual confidence course, and I took this yesterday and oh my goodness it is so incredible. A woman called Luna does it and she is just an absolute goddess, if you will. You can currently get one whole day free on Beducated, so you can go over and see what it's all about, and if you would like to, then you can get 70% off the yearly pass with my code Jessie. So I'll leave a link down below for you guys. But I just want to touch a little bit on the sexual confidence course. In the course you learn how sexual confidence and everyday confidence are intertwined, and I feel like that's a link a lot of us don't often make. A great example she gave was in relation to compliments. So when you receive a compliment, how do you react? Do you say thank you, full stop, or do you try and deflect from it, which is what most of us tend to do? So we might say, you know, if someone compliments your shirt, you'd be like, oh, this old thing, or I got this for €5, or if somebody compliments you, you might like try and compliment them. If they say, I love your makeup today, you might be like, oh, I love your earrings though, or look at your outfit, or you look beautiful today. That's you trying to make yourself smaller and essentially like disappear. You don't want to be seen. So basically when some people see you, it makes you uncomfortable. If you don't like being seen outside of the bedroom, you're going to carry that with you into the bedroom, because that's a voice inside your head and that's a voice that needs to be challenged. When it comes to confidence, it's got very little to do with your actual physical self, and it has everything to do with your perception of your physical self. So it's how you are viewing yourself. She also touches on how shame impacts our self-esteem and how to unlearn it, because shame, like a lot of things, like that self-critic voice in our heads, we don't come into the world with shame in us or with a self-critic in our head. These are things that we learn. For example, shame is often pushed upon us from religious and social expectations, and then that self-critic in our head is often from things we were told growing up, and then that voice kind of creates, and these things stick with us. And she also touches on how to build confidence and address insecurities around our bodies. You know, what takes away your confidence for a lot of people, it's our bodies and feeling unworthy of the body we're in, beauty standards, the pressure of performance in the bedroom, for example, taking too long to orgasm. I know that's something a lot of us women struggle with. And also if you're uncomfortable giving feedback to a partner, you know, maybe you're afraid of hurting their feelings. I don't want to dive too much into the course because I honestly feel like every single one of you should watch it, even if you are very sexually confident, and you can get one day free with Beducated. So I will leave a little link down below so you can go and upgrade your little skills. So my next question is, I wish I was a virgin again. I'm so good at who I've had sex with. How do I get over this? I feel like this is a really interesting one because I've definitely been in this boat before, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have as well. I went through a period where I felt like certain people didn't deserve to know me in that way, and they didn't deserve to have access to my body, and they didn't. They most definitely did, and that didn't change. But what did change is the way that I chose to look at the situation, because with everything in our lives, it's how we're looking at something, and there's always two sides to a coin on how we can be looking at things. If you have a lot of regret about sleeping with someone, again, that's probably very tied in with shame. I had to flip it and be like, I've learned something from every sexual partner I've ever had. It took me experimenting to understand myself. I learned what I was comfortable with, what I was okay with, what I wasn't okay with. I learned how to respect myself. I learned how to express myself sexually, and most importantly, I learned what sex means to me. Don't get me wrong, if I had a rewind button, there are certain choices I wouldn't make again, but past me didn't know what I know now then. And you've got to be kind to your past self, because your past self was doing her best in the moment. She was trying to do what felt right, and she was trying to do the best thing for her. Even, for example, like if you went out when you were really depressed or you were in a really low point in your life and you slept with a bunch of people and then you beat yourself up over that, it's like, but she was only looking for love and comfort. You know, she didn't know that maybe she wasn't going about it the right way, but that's all she was trying to do at the end of the day. Like, at the end of the day, she was trying to help herself, your past self. So whatever your past self was doing or whatever happened, you know, kind of be kind to her and show her compassion. I feel like you really need to flip your thinking here, and like the way I was explaining, like, maybe what you've learned from that past partner is you've learned how to respect yourself. We don't come into the world knowing how to respect ourselves. A lot of the times we learn how to respect ourselves by being disrespected. I know that's where a lot of my respect has come from. It's from me putting myself in positions in my life where I allowed myself to be treated poorly and totally disrespected and basically be shit on someone else's shoe, you know? There's absolutely no point in beating yourself up or being disappointed in yourself, because that's something that I really struggled with for a period. I felt like I'd let myself down, and I felt like, yeah, I really disappointed myself, and there's no worse feeling than being disappointed by yourself. Like any shitty situation in life, you know, we can always take something from it. Even if it's the tiniest lesson, the tiniest learn, there is always something we can take from it. So if you can take something from them experiences that weren't very enjoyable, then you're growing as a person and you're moving forward, and that's nothing but positive, you know? So yeah, don't beat yourself up. Be kind to yourself. It's gonna be okay. Our next question is, I'm seeing someone who treats me like a princess, but I feel something's missing and feel guilty. I'd ask you, first and foremost, is something missing in you, and are you trying to find that in another person? Because I know I've been here before, and essentially you're trying to fill a void, or you're trying to run away from something else that's going on in the background. For example, I was dating this guy for only about 2 months. It was very short. And there was absolutely nothing wrong with him. He was great, he treated me really well, he never did anything to disrespect me or hurt me, and, you know, there was no fault on his behalf. But from about a couple weeks in, it all felt really off to me, and I couldn't put my finger on it. Kind of like what you were saying, you feel like something's missing and you feel guilty, but you can't work it out. And this played on my mind, and I couldn't for the life of me work out what was going on. And as a few weeks went by, I continued to kind of challenge this within myself because I couldn't work it out. And I ended up realising that I wasn't fully over my previous partner before him. And that had ended very abruptly, and it was quite chaotic, and it was all just a bit of a mess, and it had messed up my head hugely. And I had figured out that I was actually afraid of being alone in that moment, because my previous partner had made me feel like I wasn't good enough, and therefore I had internalized that, and I was in return looking for some external validation, which was unfortunately in this person. And once I figured that out, I left the situation, but I wasn't aware of it at the time, and that was what I couldn't put my finger on. It didn't feel right because it wasn't aligning with me, because essentially I was avoiding looking in the mirror and facing the hard truths of what was actually going on. And what was actually going on is I needed to do some looking within me, and I needed to work on myself by myself, not with someone else, you know. And I needed to heal from my previous relationship that was just a shit show, and by jumping into something else I wasn't healing. So a lot of the time when we are with someone and they're great and it doesn't feel right, it's because it is within us. And that saying, it's not you, it's me, that is a thing. Like, that is a legit thing. That's just a little example, but a lot of the time our intuition's right. And like when I was in the situation and you were, your gut here is telling you something's off. And, you know, a lot of the time that can be within ourselves, and a lot of the time it's happening subconsciously, because I didn't realise this until about the 2 month mark, and then the 2 month mark I cut it off and I ended things. And, you know, so these things can be happen if we're not kind of self-aware and in tune with ourselves. So do a little digging inside. So our next question, and we have two. So first one is, not being able to finish sometimes, and my partner thinking they're bad at sex, and I can't have an orgasm during sex, so my partner and I feel very stressed and insecure. How? We have a narrative around sex where an orgasm gives some sort of validation, and I'm all about closing the orgasm gap, but I don't think orgasm should ever be the end goal. The more you focus on having an orgasm, or the more pressure you put on having to orgasm every time you have sex, the less likely it's going to happen. Sex should be about building intimacy, so try and shift your focus from orgasm to acts of intimacy. So intimacy is essentially what makes you feel connected to your partner, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how many orgasms you have. I feel like the most important thing here is that it's okay if both parties feel it's okay, but if one or both parties don't feel like it's okay, then it's not going to be okay, and it is going to interfere in your sex life. I feel like with this, the best thing is to focus more on having fun and experimenting rather than focusing on trying to get you to come, because that can become very frustrating for both parties, especially if nothing's happening. And it's also putting an insane amount of pressure upon yourself where you're not going to be able to relax or enjoy what's happening or let go and just kind of fall into the experience. And unless you're able to do any of them things, you're not going to reach orgasm regardless. So if you kind of just take the pressure off the orgasm, like, an orgasm is only one tiny part of sex. Like, everything else that comes into sex, like the connection, the intimacy, the closeness, the pleasure, the fun, like, sex as a whole is so pleasurable. I've had more orgasms than I ever have ever since I stopped focusing on the orgasm, and I cannot stress that enough. And also just enjoying yourself, enjoy each moment, even like if you guys are just having one big makeout session, like, you know, embracing each moment, like the pleasure of sex. If they're going down on you, if you're having intercourse, if they're fingering you, whatever it may be, like, just fully going into that moment and stop going beyond that moment, because that's the only moment you're in. If you guys agree to just focus on enjoying yourself, the orgasm is going to come. But if you guys are going in focusing on the orgasm or the enjoyment isn't going to come. It's very stressful and frustrating, and trust me, I've been there before. This next question gave me a giggle because I'm sure at one point or another we all had some worry about the noises coming out of our bodies, but how to not fart in doggy. Unfortunately, there's no preventing any noise coming out of your body during sex. Sex should be messy and it should be fun. Bodies are messy. That's just how our bodies are. We're not porn stars. We are not performing, you know. Real sex is not the same as the sex we see online on our screens, you know, when it comes to porn. Any tips for pre-hygiene or pre-sex hygiene routine? Now, obviously this is total personal preference because we're all different, but I personally like to have a shower as close as possible as I can, even like within a few hours. Not always possible, but that's what makes me feel best, is like a shower, a shave, and a whole body moisturized set. And I feel like that for me helps me get in touch with like my sexuality. So it's kind of about what hygiene routine will get you in touch with your sexuality and make you feel confident and good in yourself. Like, our vaginas are self-cleaning. You know, I do not recommend to spray anything down there, anything, not even scented shower gel. You do not need to wash her with anything apart from water. I only use water. Trust me, you will give yourself an infection, a yeast infection. So yeah, it kind of comes down to what makes you feel best, because I like to shave, but the next girl mightn't like to shave, you know, or maybe you just like to trim. Whatever you like to do that. But I always find a shower is just everything. I don't know how to communicate likes/dislikes in sex without really insinuating that I don't like what he's doing. Tell them what you do like. Most people want to feel like they're good in bed, but being good in bed differs from person to person. So how is someone else meant to know what they're doing is good in bed for you unless you give them feedback? Tell them what you do like. I think I've spoke about this before, but like, for example, if you are having intercourse and he's going too fast, tell him that you like it when he goes really slow. So just flip whatever it is that you don't like what he's doing with what you'd like him to do instead, because we as humans are really good to positive feedback and we respond really well to it. And if somebody tells us when we're doing a good job at something, we obviously want to do more of it. So if you're saying, I love it when you go slow, or if, just say, even he was going down on you and then he moved his head, and you could be like, oh baby, I'm really missing where your mouth just was, can you please bring it back to where it was? So you can do it in such a sexy, subtle way where you're not being like, sir, why did you have to move your face from the left of my vulva? Like, you don't have to be so about it. You know, you can be very subtle and sexy in the way you do it. And, you know, it's so important to communicate to your partner about what you do and you don't like, because if you don't, you are denying yourself of full pleasure and full enjoyment and having a good goddamn time. You know, you shouldn't be there performing essentially, and if you're not speaking up, you are essentially performing and you're just going along with what you think they want to do. And also, the more you communicate, the more it will make your partner comfortable communicating back. You know, you've got to give what you want to get, kind of a thing. I've been with my boyfriend 7 years and he won't move out with me. Am I wasting my time? It totally depends. The first thing I'll say is his reasons for not moving out. For example, if it's a financial situation, totally understandable. However, if it's a case where he's just like, nah, like, I'm pretty comfortable here at home, I can't be arsed, whatever, they're two totally different situations. If he's got a really good reason for it, it's one thing, but if he doesn't, I'll be brutally honest with you and say, yeah, I think you're wasting your time. Like, even me now, me and Jeremy are only together like 15 months, and if at this point he was like to me, no, I don't want to move out with you, but he didn't have like a good reason, I'd really question that, because I'd be like, you know, do you see this as like a long-term thing? Do you want us to like build a life together and grow and move forward? Like, some people are very happy to just stay stagnant, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, some people aren't motivated to move forward in life, and some people don't want to progress and grow and whatever it might be. Whereas, you know, you on the other hand, obviously have these things you want to do that are important and these goals, and you want to kind of keep pushing forward. But if you and your partner aren't on that same level, it's ultimately going to end up holding you back. You know, 7 years is a long time, and I know relationships change the more long-term a relationship is, but you guys should always be kind of growing together and allowing the other one room to grow. And it just doesn't seem like this is what is happening here, unless he has a good reason, because 7 years is such a long time. And I mean, if you don't have a good reason, why the hell don't you want to move out with me? It's so much more complex than it being a yes or no answer, because you guys have 7 years behind you and so much happens in 7 years. So yeah, I'd really just kind of ask yourself what his reasons are, how you feel about that, and then how do you see your future? Because if this man is even in his like mid-20s and he doesn't want to get out of home, it's kind of like, okay, well, you technically could be 45 and still living in the same room, because that is what happens. Like, if people, you know, don't want to do these things, they just won't, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But if you're not in the same position, you don't want to look back in years to come and be like, what was I doing? Like, I've wasted so much time when I could have been, you know, growing towards the life that I want. Instead, I was stuck because my partner refused to grow with me. The sun is slowly but surely going down, so I hope the lighting doesn't change too much. But we're going to do one last question. So, entire relationship is amazing, but unsatisfying sex and lack of attraction on a sexual level. Any advice? First, I'd ask yourself if you think sexual chemistry is missing altogether. Like, can you think back to a time where you were totally turned on and aroused by your partner and you were just dying to rip his clothes off? If the answer is yes, then this is not going to be a problem. But if the answer is no, if you never felt that kind of pull towards him and that desire, the chances are that that urge isn't just going to appear one day. But if you have felt that before, then you can get this back. Sexual chemistry kind of means that there's a spark or a pull or a connection to someone, and then sexual compatibility is more about satisfaction, and it's more of an active process, kind of asking yourself, does this work? You know, how do I feel about this? Am I happy with this? So the chemistry bit is what we're talking about here. And if you have had that before, if there was a time where you were really turned on by him, but it's just that your sex sessions as of lately haven't been satisfying your needs, then I'd say it's more of a case of, like, especially in long-term relationships, like, desire is going to shift and change throughout the relationship, and there are going to be points of the relationship where desire is a lot less for a bunch of reasons, and normally down to things that are going on in your personal life. So many things can have an effect on even your sex drive. It's kind of, you know, ties into your desire for someone, I'd ask, have you communicated your dissatisfaction to him, and have you explored new things with him yet? And talking about sex is really difficult for most of us, but it's so necessary if you want to improve your sex life, or if there's something that you're not happy with. If you refuse to communicate, nothing is going to improve, because another party cannot read your mind. What I would say here is that you need to have some uncomfortable conversations if you haven't already, and then I'd say kind of to step outside your comfort zone, maybe take some emphasis off performance and orgasm, and just kind of enjoy and bask in each other's bodies. Even kind of doing some like non-goal orientated activities, like a really long makeout session, or maybe even masturbating together in front of each other, or watching porn together, or dirty talking, or sexting, or just kind of playing and experimenting with some things. And I'd say this would be kind of your best bet on to work out if that desire is just gone a bit stale, or if it's just something that needs to kind of be reignited a little bit. Because as I said, you know, it's going to ebb and flow, especially if you guys have been together a long time. I feel like in this situation, communication, experimentation, and openness is your best bet. And even kind of outside the bedroom, like maybe you guys have kind of neglected the intimacy part outside of it, like flirting and kind of even like giving each other compliments, or doing things like giving each other a massage just for the purpose of it, not for it to lead to sex type of thing. Because I don't have a lot of details, it's kind of hard, but because you say your relationship is amazing, I do feel like this is something that you had and maybe you have just kind of neglected. So it's about putting the work in, but you've got to ask yourself, are you and is your partner willing to put the work in? Because it's not easy. Like, these things aren't easy, you know, they're uncomfortable and they're difficult, but they're so worth it in the long run. So that would be my best advice. I hope it was helpful. Okay, my darlings, I'm going to leave it here for today, but don't forget that you can get 1 whole day free on Beducated and 70% off the yearly pass using my code Jessie. I will have a link down below for that, and also follow me over on Instagram so you can get involved in these kinds of Q&As going forward. But I really hope you enjoyed and maybe took something away from this video, and I cannot wait to see you all in my next. Bye bye.